General Hospital. The night everything changed. The snow-heavy evening pressing down on Port Charles should have silenced the world, yet Britt Westbourne could hear every tremor inside her own chest. Above Bobby's, in a small room lit by a single lamp that flickered as though it understood her fear, Britt faced the realization she had been outrunning for weeks. Jason had returned, not with comfort but with the kind of information that reshapes destinies. His voice was steady, almost too calm, as he explained the legal maneuver that would ultimately topple Professor Dalton's empire and expose the fractured alliances beneath it. But Britt heard none of that, not really. What reached her was the subtext buried beneath every word. Jason was preparing for war, and she was the reason the match had been struck. Every threat from Sidwell, every coded message that hinted at consequences far beyond a simple academic scandal, was now rushing toward them like a storm swelling above the harbor. When Jason mentioned the key, that innocuous object that had become the centerpiece of her terror, she felt her throat lock. He wasn't interrogating her, but the attempt to understand what she had gotten herself into was enough to unravel whatever composure she had left. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, not out of weakness but out of desperation. She needed reassurance, something clear and sharp and certain, a promise that Jason would choose her even when the shadows around them demanded he choose something else. She needed to know that her life, the one she kept gambling, wasn't being spent on someone who would abandon her when the real danger erupted. Jason reached for her hand, but before he could speak the words she was begging him to say, his phone shattered the moment in half. "Sonny." And the tone in his voice as he answered told her everything. This wasn't something that could wait. Something had gone wrong, very wrong, and Sonny was pulling Jason back into the world where loyalty spoke louder than love. Britt didn't yell. Didn't plead. She merely stared at him with a hollow resignation, the kind that forms when every question finally receives its answer. If Jason had to leave now, in this moment when she was breaking, then she already knew where she stood. The door closed behind him with a finality she couldn't bear. Outside, wind sliced across the street as Jason moved with the kind of controlled urgency that came naturally to him. He met Laura Spencer on the roadside after receiving her distressed call about a tire that had blown out near the outskirts of town. Neither of them expected that helping with a tire would turn into something far darker. Jason tightened the last lug nut and guided Laura back to her car, unaware that the world was shifting behind them. Minutes after Jason drove off, Laura stepped into her office, and stepped straight into a nightmare. A man was slumped on the floor, unmoving, as though the life had been drained from him long before she opened the door. Dalton. The professor whose name had threaded itself into every whispered conversation for the past month. The professor who was tied to Sidwell. The professor who had tangled Britt into his schemes. Now he was dead, sprawled across her office rug like an accusation meant just for her. Laura's scream never made it past her lips. Her body turned stiff, her palms numb against her phone as she tried, and failed, to dial the police. Shock rooted her to the room until instinct, or fear, or both, made her call the only person whose voice she could trust. Sonny. When Sonny picked up, he heard something he rarely heard from Laura Spencer: absolute paralysis. She whispered the details in trembling pieces: the body, the blood, the impossible feeling that she had walked into a trap set long before she stepped into that office. Sonny didn't waste time with judgment. While he soothed her through the haze of panic, his mind was already arranging the pieces. Someone had staged this. Someone wanted Laura implicated. Someone understood that she was vulnerable after the election and wanted to capitalize on that fragility. He ordered her to sit down, breathe, wait. He promised her the car Dalton had used would be taken care of, cleaned, removed from sight before any curious eyes could start drawing conclusions. He promised her she wouldn't face this alone. But beneath those promises, Sonny felt the burn of something sharper. This had Sidwell written all over it. Ezra had motive, yes, anger, political spite, a thirst for chaos, and Drew had ties to the broader network of enemies lurking beneath Port Charles's surface. But none of them had the precision, the cruelty, the controlled timing that this kind of setup required. Sidwell, on the other hand, thrived on psychological warfare. He didn't strike directly. He created atmospheres of dread, environments that destroyed reputations long before they destroyed bodies. The fact that Dalton had been found in Laura's office wasn't a coincidence, it was a message. And if Dalton was dead, then Sidwell had decided to begin playing by a different set of rules. Jason, unaware of the horror unfolding across town, drove into the distance while Britt spiraled alone in her room. Her thoughts collided violently: Sidwell's threats, Dalton's presence in her nightmares, the key she shouldn't have touched, the secret she shouldn't have kept, and Jason's sudden departure twisted everything into a narrative she could no longer escape. She feared she had destroyed Jason by dragging him into her darkness. She feared she had destroyed herself by loving him. Meanwhile, Sonny stood in his office, staring out the window at a city that never seemed to stop choosing chaos over peace. He knew Jason would return soon, and when he did, the lines between Britt's crisis and Laura's unraveling reality would intersect in ways none of them could control. Sidwell was tightening his grip, but he was also becoming reckless, and that made him dangerous in an entirely new way. The coming days wouldn't be about protecting reputations or solving political disputes. They would be about survival. About choosing alliances carefully. About preparing for the kind of conflict where even Jason's resilience might not be enough. If Britt's key held the answer, then Sidwell was the question, one that would demand blood before it was satisfied. And as Sonny pieced together the implications of Dalton's death, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, an approaching threat that wasn't just personal, but existential. General Hospital was about to become a battlefield again, and the feud between Sonny Corinthos and Jen Sidwell was only just beginning. Just tell me,